This video actually kind of interests me. Sad. It's the state of gaming. This was released 6 days ago. I think this is about Skull and Bones, the new Ubisoft game that came out. Let's see what this is all about. Here we go.
Good afternoon, my fellow gamers. As all of you know, I am one of you. I am an avid enjoyer of gaming. It's been a huge part of my life for my entire life. It's in my veins, it's in my blood, it's embedded deep in my DNA.
Same.
My body isn't powered by a heart, it's powered by another graphics card. It's a 4090 in here that's keeping this flesh mech suit online.
I'm about the same. My heart is a 3080. It's not as good.
Like Tony Stark, but nerdier. Anyway, I feel as though I'm the only one qualified to give you the state of gaming address for 2024. Now, I've seen a lot
Let's see it.
Moaning, a lot of whining, complaining, a bunch of hoo-wee and hoo-ha and yee-haw about gaming industry is dying. It's this festering wound. It needs a huge change, this and that. And while I agree with...
I mean, I don't necessarily think the gaming industry is dying. I think it's just a lot of AAA developers that are, that if they haven't already lost touch, they're slowly starting to. Yeah, I'm one of those people that think that, is a firm believer that the future of gaming lies with, AA and indie developers, because those seem like the more passionate devs in the gaming space compared to, AAA developers that need to meet deadlines, that need to meet investor expectations, things like that. It just seems like AAA is, starting to become more and more. I don't know how they actually say it, but AAA is starting to fall off, essentially, is what I'm getting at.
Some of the sentiment, I actually think there are signs that the industry is going in a better direction overall. And I'll explain what I mean, but I want to start with something obvious. A lot of the $70 games we've been getting recently are just terrible.
Yeah. That goes without saying. I mean, Forspoken, oh god, the day before. Oh, that was a train wreck. What else is there? What else? I guess Scarlet and Violet, but I haven't played those. I haven't played like either of the other games that I mentioned, but those are just a handful of the big oofs that were put out last year or the year before. Yikes.
Not even worth playing, definitely not worth paying $70 for, such as Suicide Squad, and most recently, the first quadruple A game, according to Ubisoft, Skull and Bones.
The Skull and Bones, baby.
Suicide Squad has flopped. Its player count has plummeted to under 1,000 players on Steam.
Yeah, I would imagine that, a game that had a terrible, network debacle a few days after it launched would probably not maintain a healthy player base, but I mean, it's just common sense, guys.
And this is a live service game. This isn't just one of those single player games where you expect a massive drop off. This is one of those things that's supposed to live on for a long time that gets people hooked like heroin.
Yeah.
The only thing that got them hooked on was the idea of better games, because that shit is miserable. So
it was rough, dude.
Largely a failure, and now Skull and Bones seems to be following suit, which is Ubisoft's latest super stinker, which is a ship combat game.
Skull and Bones looked promising when it was first announced. I saw that. I kind of saw it as another game that would probably follow the same path as Sea of Thieves. Have a rocky launch and potentially rebound, but I don't think you can rebound from this. I think Skull and Bones kind of, it's kind of the ship that will sink if we're going on the theme of, pirate ships. It's the ship that won't survive the battle, essentially.
Without boarding. So it takes out the most fun part about being a pirate, the boarding, and reduces it to just being a cutscene. Quadruple A my ass.
Yeah,
That's
that's not good.
For different adjectives for how bad it is. Abominable, awful, abysmal, asinine. Like, it's so stupid to me how this game is out there right now in its beta or whatever for $70 when it doesn't even have boarding. Fucking Assassin's Creed Black Flag a decade ago.
Yeah, a game from a literal decade ago has Skull and Bones beat out. Oh my god, bro, it's just sad to see, dude. You just hate to see it, but at the same time, they kind of asked for it, cause, yeah. I mean, it's Ubisoft, so, like, I don't think you should have expected anything less, but, yeah, not good.
Has better ship combat and a lot more fun experience of being a pirate. It's crazy. I will not be playing Skull and Bones. I want to make it clear. I've only watched the streamers play it as well as the reviews on it, and I think it is in an inexcusably bad state. This is just blatant garbage that's being put out here for a quick payday and a big infusion of cash. I don't foresee them ever actually making this game good. I'll go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, that's initially what I said. Like, I don't see this game actually rebounding. I really don't. I mean, Sea of Thieves had a comeback at one point, and you know, it's still getting good. It's still getting good numbers from what I've last seen. But Skull and Bones, I don't see how they can actually pick this up. I genuinely don't. I'm sorry.
Put it on record here. We can check back in on this in 2 years if Skull and Bones happens to be the next biggest game on the planet. That's amazing. But I just don't see that happening, especially not with Ubisoft at the helm. It looks so painfully mediocre at best. The best compliment I've seen anyone give Skull and Bones is that it's mediocre.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? Paying $70 for mediocrity?
That's the best anybody's ever said, I guess. Yeah, that's not good. That is not great. If the best review says it's mediocre, oh boy, I mean, wow. Oof. Big oof.
And doing it with a smile on your face, because I can't, and you shouldn't accept it either. And this is where I get into the positive news. Where a lot of these games have increased their price and decreased their quality, the gap in the market has only widened for people hungry for actually good games. And that gap has been filled by smaller studios making smaller games. So like the $40 price tag games, for example. Those have been dominating 2024. Pal World breaking all of the records.
Pal World, Lethal Company, there's another one, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, all I remember is Pal World and Lethal Company. Those are the only two that I remember. Just had a memory lapse. My apologies. But yeah, those two games were made by a lesser known company. Actually, I think Lethal Company was made by a single individual on Twitter. And dude, the only experience that person had was using Roblox Studio. And they made one of the biggest indie games of 2023. I mean, if somebody like that beats you out, you know you're doing something terribly wrong. As a AAA company, no less. Oh my god. Wow. And yeah, Power World was made by, I think it was made by a Japanese company that, is not as big as, like, other developers, but you know what? They made a solid game. Pokemon with guns. What's not to love?
Basically. And now, most recently, Helldivers 2 having this amazing.
That's the one. That's the one that I saw. Helldivers 2. The internet took Twitter by storm, dude. No cap. bro. Every like 90% of the clips that I've seen on my follower tab on Twitter is Helldivers gameplay. 90%. Probably less than that, but you know. Like, I see why people enjoy it. It looks like a hell of fun time, dude. I wish I could play it, but sadly I have an Xbox One. I don't even have the Series S or Series X. I'm stuck on Xbox One S, dude. So I'm probably not gonna get the chance to play Helldivers 2. If I am able to play, it's gonna be when the hype dies down, and you know, that's just a track record that I have with games. I always get into it when the hype dies down. Sag. Big Sag.
Blow up. Over 400,000 concurrent players right now for Helldivers 2.
Yep.
And it's only growing by the day.
On Steam alone. Imagine what it's like on PlayStation. Probably double that number. If not, you know, like 1.5 times as many players, but that's a lot of people playing one game, dude. Most AAA devs would kill to have that number of concurrent players, no less. Not just you know, active players, concurrent players. That's insane, dude.
Day. And Helldivers 2 is an amazing game. It's full of passion and fun. I think it's one of the best co-op experiences I've had since Lethal Company. And speaking of Lethal Company, that's another example to what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Last year we saw Lethal Company come out and absolutely spank the cheeks of the gaming.
Everybody and their freaking mothers were playing that game, dude. Like my entire Twitch tab, like, I use Opera GX, right? So I have the Twitch tab, and I opened it up because, like, I think there were like 30 plus people streaming at one time. And dude, the amount of people that were playing Lethal Company, more than half the people that were online in like a certain day were streaming Lethal Company. It was that big. It was that popular, dude. That's insane to me. It'd just be insane to you too.
Industry had it bent over their knee, disciplining them, showing them how it can be done if you just make a fun game. It's a cheap game made by a single developer, and it took the whole industry by storm.
Yeah, it's a wild concept to actually put out a good functional video game. Like, imagine how strange of a concept that is to these AAA developers that, you know, just fail each time they're presented the opportunity to make an actually good, worthwhile experience. Bro, you hate to see companies that should succeed stumble because of a plethora of different issues. You know, whether, you know, it's development hell, pressure from investors, you know, having to get the game out on like a specific date, like having, you know, time restrictions and whatnot. It's just, bro, so many games that could have been good are just ruined by like these outside sources. And yeah, it sucks, dude.
For a while, and it's still popular to this day. So we're seeing these games pop up that aren't blockbusters by any means. They're not $100 million production, fucking 10 years in development hell. You know, these are games made by smaller teams that just deliver unique and fun experiences. And it shows how hungry gamers are for that kind of product. I've said for a while, the future...
Yeah, shocker. People want to play good video games. People want to have good experiences. Imagine that. It's such a wild concept to, you know, a lot of these investors of AAA companies. It's just a big part of that is they're not gamers, number one. Yeah, it's so wild, dude.
The future of gaming is not in more AAA titles that get more and more expensive to produce and spend more and more time in development. It's these games, these like AA games coming out that are cheaper, a lower price point, and still offering many hours worth of fun to players. And we're seeing that right now, and you're seeing how they're being rewarded with this level of success. And I think that is a great sign for things to come. I'm hoping this will start to push developers away from just, pumping out this formulaic by the numbers generic garbage like Suicide Squad, trying to capitalize on.
I don't have hopes that I'm sorry. I don't have hopes that AAA companies will actually pick up the slack. It doesn't seem likely. I'm sorry. It just don't seem likely to me. Again, future lies with AA and independent devs. That's my opinion. We'll see some gems. We'll see some like hidden gems from AAA companies from time to time. It's not like that's never gonna happen, but 5-star experiences from AAA companies going forward they're gonna be like 1 in like 15. Probably like 1 in 50. I just don't have faith in the the AAA industry at large.
Buzzword genres like live service nonsense, even though there's nothing in there that makes the game actually worth playing. Or most recently with Ubisoft just putting out the most bare bones pirate game ever, just to try and capitalize off that as well. I'm hoping companies will start to pay more attention to the success of these $40 games, these smaller games, and shift to that direction. Instead of spending 5 years developing a pile of mediocre garbage, why not spend a year or so developing something that's much smaller in scale, but tries to do something different that is just a fun game for maybe like 10, 15 hours even. You don't need a game that's going to keep a player hooked for like 80 hours plus by just delivering more escort missions like Suicide Squad.
Yeah, you don't need to have that. You don't need to have a complex game. Just, you could have the most simple game, like, Fall Guys. Fall Guys is so simple of a game. And yeah, it's so popular. Or Among Us. Among Us was huge back when it released. And it was the most Among Us is literally Town of Salem. It's just like more colorful Town of Salem. If you know what that game is. Bro, you could put out the most simple of games and they'll sell like crazy, dude. It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. Not rocket scientists. Jesus Christ, Ace. Come on, really? It's not rocket science, guys. Come on.
Games to do. You can be satisfied by delivering like a $20 to $40 game that gives a player 15 hours worth of fun, and they're done with it by the end. That's totally fine. You get your money's worth, and that makes me excited. Now, granted, the 3 examples I've given of these massive games that are smaller teams, smaller price, Pal World, Helldivers 2, Lethal Company, those games have tons and tons and tons of hours worth of content in them for you to enjoy. But I still think there's nothing wrong if the industry shifts to making smaller games that are only like 15 hours worth of entertainment, as long as it's a really unique experience and it's fun to play. I think you would have your money's worth, and the price point being at that 20 to 40 range. Like the $70 price tag should be reserved for the really meaningful titles, like a GTA 6 style thing. Obviously, that's the most extreme example. But when you see a $70...
Yeah, and I'm gonna say this too. Call of Duty, in like games like Call of Duty, games like Battlefield, they should not have a $70+ price tag. Especially like Call of Duty with the Vault Edition, that's like over $100. That should not be a thing that keeps on happening. It's gonna keep happening because people will buy it regardless. But yeah, especially with Modern Warfare 3, which was one of the most panned entries in the series. God, I cannot speak right today. It was one of the most panned entries in the series. Yeah, that should not still be like $70+. It shouldn't. I'm just saying. At the least, I could probably see myself paying like $20 for MW3. I got the OG MW3 for $20 recently. It was like November. Yeah, I don't know, dude. And apparently, the next Battlefield is going to be 2025, which is probably going to be a full price release. Which, oh boy, that's a whole different demon in and of itself. Let's just continue.
Price tag for something. You're expecting the highest level of quality, but right now, when you see $70 or $60, it's you could be getting the worst game of the year. Fucking Jujutsu Kaisen Cursed Clash is a $60 game right now, and that game is unforgivably awful. And I think it's good news that
I'd imagine so.
Developers are not being rewarded for it. Like, again, Suicide Squad flopping, Jujutsu Kaisen Cursed Clash, the most refunded game in history, I believe, according to one of the articles.
Oh boy,
which makes sense.
It's really bad if that's the case.
Actually got scammed. Actually, just completely full-blown blatant scam. So it makes sense everyone would be refunding it. Like, and Skull and Bones looking like it's going to be a flop. All of these big budget productions,
and then you got The Day Before, which was literally a freaking scam, dude. Like, if you bought The Day Before, I apologize for you. Like, I apologize that you had to subject yourself to that blatant cash grab. Oh god, like, the thing was, I wanted The Day Before to, be like Tom Clancy's The Division, but with zombies. That's what it looked like it was gonna be. Got something completely different. It was an extraction shooter. It was just crappier Tarkov. Yeah, it sucks, dude. It just sucks to see.
That are being sold for $60 to $70 are not really turning a big profit for these companies. So I feel like they're going to start to pay a lot more attention to the smaller budget titles and the titles that they can actually do more with, because you won't need to invest years upon years of development time to it.
Yeah, are they going to get better? Potentially. Are the games still going to be $70? Most likely. I don't see them lowering the price tag at all. That's just what you got to expect from AAA companies. They're not gonna put out something that's like $20 or $30. The time of that is over, unfortunately.
You instead just need to invest into a good idea and a passionate team that can deliver something fun for a reasonable price. Like, it's that simple. And we're seeing this proven time and time again now, more often now than ever. So I actually like the direction the gaming industry is going right now, because we're rewarding some of the more unique titles, the more fun titles like the Helldivers. Like, it's nice to see that. Recently, the most popular games haven't been dominated by AAA blockbusters just bullying indie titles or anything. It's actually been the smaller studios, the smaller, cheaper games that are annihilating the big boys on the block. And I just think that's great. So I'm excited to see if this...
Bro, I just thought of this. The way he describes it, that's like a dinghy with like a 50 cal machine gun taking down a super cruiser. That's literally the analogy that I thought of off the top of my head. Like, the most heavily armored ship gets sunk by like 3 people on the dinghy, just shooting at it with multiple 50 caliber machine guns and sinking it. That's basically what it is. Like, these AA and indie companies are just destroying AAA developers, and it's not even close, dude. It's literally not even close.
Trend continues throughout 2024. It's still very early. We haven't seen the biggest heavy hitters of 2024 come out yet. So I guess that remains to be seen how exactly it's all going to shape up. But I wanted to talk about it a little bit because it put a smile on my face seeing the success of Helldivers today. Helldivers is really like the catalyst that made me want to talk about it, because I really love everything they've done with that game. And I love to see a game like that being rewarded in the way that it is.
I've been seeing so many comparisons of Halo 3 ODST and Helldivers, and you know what? It makes me really want to play. It not only makes me want to play Helldivers, but it makes me want to like replay Halo 3 ODST, because that game was incredible. Like being an extension of Halo 3, it was phenomenal, dude. Like not playing as a Spartan and playing as like essentially a special forces foot soldier. There should have been another Halo ODST game. Like just saying. It's a travesty that there isn't.
And I hope we see more things like it throughout the year, and just generally in the future of gaming. I really hope we can start getting away from all of these massive $100 million games that just are soulless, just cash grabs.
Yeah.
And we get back to having more AA titles out there.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in the Xbox 360 era, early in the 360s.
Bro, like, that era, 360, PS3, Nintendo Wii, that was essentially, like, the golden age of AA titles. Like, dude, you saw so many gems. And, like, even back in, like, the PS2 original Xbox days, you had so many hard-hitting AA titles. Like, dude, I'm struggling to think of an example, but, like, if you knew those games, you probably had fond memories of playing them. Like, they were so good, dude. I just wish we could go back to that era, kind of, because, dude, god dang, dude. How could gaming fall from grace so hard, man? I just am struggling to piece that together, dude. Yikes.
Lifespan, there were so many games coming out from so many different studios that just had all kinds of creative ideas that they were just throwing shit at the wall to see what stuck.
Yep.
And sometimes you had some hidden gems, some bangers. But nowadays, in the mainstream gaming space, these giant players only invest heavily into like one or two projects and put all of their eggs in that basket. And most of the time, it's not turning a profit anymore because the games just aren't really hitting. Like, some of them are, of course, obviously. But there's been so many flops recently that you just keep hearing about.
Dude, all the good studios either merged with, like, these now AAA studios, or they just went under completely. Like, I remember the original THQ. The original THQ put out some bangers, dude. Like, I'm a WWE fan, so, like, the SmackDown vs. Raw games, perfect, absolutely insane. Like, if you play 2007 or 2008, dude, those were like premium experiences back then. Like, THQ rarely, if ever, missed. And I think another studio that I'm thinking of is Midway, like Midway Studios, the people who originally made the Mortal Kombat series before, NetherRealm Studios. Like, aside from Mortal Kombat, Midway actually put out some decent titles. And, unfortunately, Midway was one of those companies that went under. And THQ is now THQ Nordic. And, the reins for WWE games kind of got passed off to 2K, which have had their series, which have had their series of L's, but also they put out some pretty big W's, so it's not completely terrible. But at the same time, it kind of it's not the same as it was back in the day. Yeah.
It's not sustainable. You can't have every game take 6 years in development and cost 9 figures to develop. It's not going to work long term. So I really think the future is back into that $20 to $40 price range on games, smaller in scale, smaller in scope and development time, and you
Yeah, like they really need to bring those like $20 to $40 price tags back, because I'm sorry, I'm not gonna pay like $70+. I rarely have ever paid $60 for games when they were that price. So yeah, I'll be damned if I'm gonna spend like $70 on a game. Like, I'm sorry, that ain't happening, Chief. That just ain't happening.
produce some interesting shit. So I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. That's kind of where I think everything is in the gaming industry right now, and I'm pretty optimistic for the future of it. That's really about it. So yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's just... Dude, gaming is not the same as it once was. I'm sorry, it just... it's so far from that sort of golden age, like that era of greatness. Ugh, yeah, I just... Wow. Okay, I'm gonna link you guys the video. Alright, give me a sec, give me a second, give me a second. There you go. Ooh. Yeah, that was God, now I wanna... Dude, I wanna play the PS2 again, but I don't have one. It just makes me so sad, man.